It was Christmas morning 1965, and the first thing I saw when I bolted downstairs in my footy pajamas was my father dragging every single one of my toys toward the backyard like a man possessed. You're new here and you love stories that crawl under your skin and stay there. Hit that subscribe button right now and ring the bell, because what happened next in our little house in Youngstown, Ohio, would destroy my family, resurrect secrets older than I was, and teach my father a lesson in regret he would choke on for the rest of his life. Dad had the radio tuned to some old-timey station playing Jingle Bell Rock while he worked, but the song sounded wrong, warped, like it was laughing at me. Had already piled my brand new G.I. Joes, my erector set, my shiny red Schwinn bicycle with the banana seat, even the teddy bear Grandma mailed from Cleveland, into a mountain in the snowy grass. Mom stood on the back porch in her robe, arms wrapped around herself, whispering, "Ray, please. It's Christmas." But Dad wasn't listening. He struck a match, tossed it, and the flames shot up so fast the heat slapped my face through the kitchen window. I screamed. I was 8 years old and I had never seen fire look hungry before. Dad turned, face orange in the glow, and said the sentence that still echoes in my skull. "You got coal, Tommy. Coal means you were bad. Bad boys don't get to keep good things." The night before, I'd raced to the living room at midnight like a ninja, hoping to catch Santa. Instead I knocked over the tree. Ornaments shattered, the angel smashed, and the glass star cut my hand pretty deep. I hid the evidence under the couch because I was terrified. Morning came, and in my stocking, where candy and comics should have been, there was nothing but 3 chunky pieces of coal wrapped in red ribbon. Dad, who grew up dirt poor during the Depression, who once told me his own father made him burn his only toy truck for lying about homework, decided this was the year he'd finally break the cycle the only way he knew how, by making sure I felt the same shame he did. He thought if he destroyed everything I loved, I'd turn good overnight. But Dad didn't know Grandma Ruth was already on the Greyhound from Cleveland, clutching a cardboard box in her lap the whole 180 miles, a box she told the driver contained a late Christmas miracle. By the time the toys were curling black and the smell of burning plastic filled the house, her taxi crunched up the driveway. Grandma stepped out in her Sunday coat and pillbox hat, snowflakes melting on the fake cherries sewn to the brim. She took one look at the bonfire, one look at me crying in the doorway with blood from the night before still crusted on my palm, and something ancient and furious lit behind her eyes. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just said, "Raymond James Callahan, put that hose down and face your mother's mother like a man." Dad froze, the garden hose dangling in his hand like he'd forgotten what it was for. Grandma marched straight past him, opened that cardboard box, and pulled out something wrapped in a crimson velvet cloth the color of fresh blood. Everyone went quiet except the crackle of my melting bicycle tires. She unwrapped the cloth and held up the most beautiful dollhouse I'd ever seen, hand-carved, 3 stories tall, with real hinged doors, tiny furniture, even working lights powered by a little battery. In the attic, but it wasn't new. The paint was chipped in places, the wallpaper inside faded to the soft yellow of old piano keys. Grandma looked Dad dead in the eye and said, "This belonged to your sister, Ray. The one you never talk about. The one who got coal in 1943 and hung herself with her own stocking the next morning." Mom gasped. "I didn't even know Dad had a sister." Dad's face went the color of the snow. Dad dropped the hose. Grandma kept going, voice calm as a frozen lake. "Mama saved this dollhouse from the trash after the funeral. She couldn't bear to burn it like the church told her to. Said evil don't live in toys, it lives in men who think shame can raise a child better child than love can. I've kept it locked in my trunk for 22 years waiting for the day I'd need to remind a fool what real punishment feels like." She set the dollhouse on the porch step, reached back into the box, and pulled out a single lump of coal, shiny, almost wet-looking, wrapped in the same red ribbon that had been in my stocking. Dad whispered, "Where did you say mine your daddy worked?" Grandma said. "Same vein. I went there last week and chipped it out myself. Thought maybe you needed to feel what it's like to watch something you love turn to ash." Then Grandma did the thing that still makes my blood run cold every Christmas. She walked over to the fire, picked up my charred G.I. Joe, its plastic face melted into a scream, and tucked it gently into the dollhouse's tiny living room next to a little wooden chair. She placed the new lump of coal on the miniature kitchen table like it was Christmas dinner, and she said, "Merry Christmas, Ray. Your sister's waiting for you inside." The flames behind her popped and hissed like they were answering. Dad stumbled backward, tripped over the hose, and sat down hard in the snow. Grandma turned to me, knelt so we were eye to eye, and pressed something into my bleeding hand. It was a tiny silver key. "This opens the attic upstairs," she said. "Everything you lost is already up there waiting, good as new. Santa don't bring coal to little boys who make honest mistakes, Tommy. He brings second chances. But sometimes grandmas have to deliver them personally." I looked past her. The fire was dying, just smoking black skeletons of toys now. Dad was crying, big choking sobs I'd never heard from him before, not even when Grandpa died. Grandma stood up, brushed snow off her coat, and said loud enough for the neighbors peeking through curtains to hear, "You ever lay a hand on this child's joy again, Raymond, and I swear on every saint in heaven I'll burn this whole house down myself with you chained to the radiator. Blood don't get you mercy when you act like the devil." She took my good hand and led me inside. Mom followed, shooting Dad a look I'd never seen from her, equal parts disgust and pity. Dad stayed out there in the cold until the firemen came because Mrs. Henderson across the street called them thinking our house was burning. Didn't see him again for 3 days. That night, after Grandma tucked me in, I crept to the attic with the little silver key. The dollhouse sat in the center of the floor, but it wasn't empty anymore. Every toy Dad burned was inside, perfect, not a scorch mark on them. My bicycle leaned against the tiny garage. My teddy bear sat on the little bed, and in the attic of the dollhouse, behind a door the size of a matchbox, sat the 3 pieces of coal from my stocking, glowing faintly red like they were still hot. But the scariest part, in the top window, looking out at me, stood a tiny girl in a 1940s dress, smiling like she'd been waiting a long time for company. Slammed the dollhouse shut, ran back to bed, and didn't sleep a wink. Grandma stayed with us until spring. She never raised her voice again, but Dad never raised a hand to me either. He started drinking more, coming home with little gifts, like he was scared not to, and every Christmas after that, a single lump of coal appeared on the porch the night before Christmas Eve, wrapped in red ribbon, no note. Dad would find it first, carry it inside with shaking hands, and lock it in the tool chest in the garage like it might explode. Never spoke about his sister again, but sometimes, when the house was quiet, I'd hear whispering coming from the attic, soft, like a little girl teaching someone how to play. Grandma passed in 1978. She left me the dollhouse in her will with a letter that said, "Keep it closed, Tommy. Some gifts ain't meant to be opened twice." I didn't listen. I was 21, thought I was brave, thought it was just a story. So on Christmas Eve 1986 I carried it down to the living room, drunk on my own nostalgia, and opened every tiny door. That was the night my father disappeared. 2 days later they found him in the old abandoned coal mine outside town, curled up like he was sleeping, hands clutching a red ribbon and a single lump of coal so cold it had frost on it in July. The coroner said it was exposure, but I know better, because when I went back to close the dollhouse one last time, every room was empty except the attic. There, 2 tiny figures now sat at a tiny table having Christmas dinner, a little girl in a 1940s dress, and a grown man with my father's face, smiling like he was finally home. Drop a like if you felt that chill. The first time I ever heard my father cry like a child was the morning Grandma Ruth made him watch his own childhood die in that dollhouse, but it wouldn't be the last. After she marched me inside and left him kneeling in the snow next to the smoking corpses of my toys, something inside Dad cracked wide open and never closed again. He came in 3 days later smelling like the inside of a whiskey bottle and the outside of a coal stove. His eyes were red-rimmed, his cheeks hollow, and he carried a brown paper sack from the 5 and dime like it was the Holy Grail. Inside were 2 brand new G.I. Joes still in the blister packs, the exact same ones that had melted into screaming plastic puddles in the backyard. He set them on the kitchen table in front of me without a word, then went straight to the garage and didn't come out until supper. Mom told me later he spent the entire time sat on an overturned bucket staring at the lump of coal Grandma had placed on the workbench like it might speak to him. From that day forward, every single toy I ever asked for appeared within a week, no matter how much it cost. Dad took extra shifts at the mill, came home black with soot, and handed the money to Mom with a look that begged her not to ask where the rest of his paycheck went. He never yelled again. He barely spoke at all. But the house got quieter in a different way, the kind of quiet that waits for something worse. Grandma stayed until the snow melted that April. She slept in the sewing room, kept the dollhouse on a little table by her bed, and every night I'd hear her humming an old Irish lullaby my mother said she hadn't sung since before Dad was born. Tuaraluralaral, soft and low, like she was calming something that wasn't me. Some nights I'd creep to her door and peek through the crack. The little battery lights in the dollhouse would be on, glowing warm through the tiny windows, and Grandma would be sitting cross-legged on the floor in her nightgown, arranging the miniature furniture just so, talking in a whisper to someone inside. I never saw who she was talking to. I was too scared to get closer. But once, just once, I heard a little girl's voice answer her. Clear as a bell. He's sorry now, Mama Ruth. But sorry don't bring the morning back. Grandma answered, hush, darling. Morning's coming for all of us soon enough. When Grandma finally packed her suitcase to go back to Cleveland, she hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. She smelled like lavender and coal dust and something metallic I couldn't name. She pressed the silver key into my hand again and said, remember what I told you, Tommy. Some doors stay locked for a reason. You leave that house closed until you're old enough to carry what's inside it. Then she looked over my shoulder at Dad, who was pretending to read the newspaper in the living room, and added loud enough for him to hear, and you, Raymond James, you remember what happens to men who try to burn joy out of children. Fire don't care whose hands it's in. Dad's paper started shaking. He didn't look up. Life tried to go back to normal, whatever normal was after you've watched your father torch your Christmas in the name of discipline. I played with the new toys, rode the new bike Dad bought to replace the melted Schwinn, went to school, did my chores. But every night when the house settled and the radiators clanked, I could hear it, the faint sound of miniature footsteps running across the attic floorboards directly above my bedroom. Pat 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 pat, pause this pat 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 pat, like a child playing tag with someone I couldn't see. The first few times I ran to Mom, but she'd just tuck me back in and say it was the house settling or mice or maybe the wind. Dad never came. He started sleeping on the couch with the television on low volume just loud enough to drown out whatever he was scared of hearing. By the summer of 1966 the footsteps weren't the only thing. I'd wake up some mornings and find tiny handprints on the bathroom mirror, perfect little prints like a 6-year-old girl who'd just washed her hands and reached up to see her reflection. They were always on the inside of the glass. Mom scrubbed and scrubbed with Windex until her fingers pruned, but the prints always came back the next day. Then the radio in the kitchen started flipping stations on its own. It would be playing Perry Como or Andy Williams and suddenly twist to nothing but dead static and a faraway child laughing. Dad unplugged it one night, wrapped the cord around it like he was strangling it, and threw it in the trash. Next morning it was back on the counter, plugged in, playing I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus at full volume. Nobody had gone outside to the bins. Dad lost weight that year. A lot of it. His milk coveralls hung off him like they belonged to a bigger man. He grew a beard, patchy and gray even though he was only 35, and stopped going to Sunday Mass with us. Father Murphy came by the house twice to check on him, but Dad just sat on the porch steps smoking Lucky Strikes one after another and staring at the spot in the yard where he'd built the bonfire. When the priest asked what was troubling him, Dad said, "Some sins don't wash off in church, Father. Some sins follow you home and ask to be tucked in at night." Father Murphy blessed the house anyway, splashing holy water in every corner while Dad watched from the hallway with a look that said he didn't believe in blessings anymore. The worst night came in October 1966, the night Dad tried to burn the dollhouse. I woke up choking on smoke. The hallway was thick with it, orange light flickering under the attic door. I ran upstairs barefoot and found Dad on his knees in front of the open attic hatch, the dollhouse in the center of the floor already licking with flames. He had a red gas can tipped over beside him, the sharp smell of fuel everywhere. He was sobbing and praying at the same time, "Please God, let it be enough, let it end. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." The little curtains in the dollhouse windows were curling black, the tiny furniture popping as it burned. And there, in the top attic window of the dollhouse, I swear on my life, stood the little girl, banging on the glass with both fists, mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear over the roar of the fire. I screamed for Mom. She came running up the stairs in her nightgown, took one look, and slapped Dad across the face so hard his lip split. She grabbed the wool blanket off the old trunk and beat the flames out while I dragged the garden hose from the bathroom and sprayed until the dollhouse was nothing but a soaked, charred wreck. Dad just sat there the whole time, rocking back and forth, hands over his ears. When the smoke finally cleared, Mom turned to him and said in a voice I'd never heard from her, low and deadly, "You get out of my house tonight, Ray Callahan, or so help me God I will call the police and tell them you tried to burn your own son alive." Dad looked at her, looked at me, looked at the ruined dollhouse still dripping on the floorboards, and nodded like a man who'd already been dead for months. He left before sunrise. Took his mill lunchbox, his coat, and the bottle of old Granddad he kept behind the water heater. Didn't even pack clothes. Just walked out into the frost with his boots untied. We didn't hear from him for 6 weeks. Then, on Christmas Eve 1966, exactly 1 year after the bonfire in the yard, a Youngstown PD cruiser pulled up in front of the house. 2 officers got out carrying a cardboard box. Inside was every single toy Dad had burned the year before, my G.I. Joes, my erector set, my teddy bear, even the melted Schwinn frame, all of it somehow restored, paint bright, chrome shining, like they'd never seen fire in their lives. There was a note in Dad's handwriting, shaky and smeared, "Tell Tommy I finally found the morning. Tell him I'm sorry I took so long." The officers said they'd found the toys arranged in a perfect circle around Dad's body in the abandoned Jean Marie coal mine 20 miles outside town. He was sitting upright against the timber wall, smiling, hands folded in his lap like he was waiting for someone to come get him. In his coat pocket was the silver key Grandma had given me, the one I thought I'd lost months earlier. And wrapped around his neck, knotted like a Christmas bough, was a little girl's red hair ribbon. The house never felt empty after Dad disappeared into that coal mine. It felt crowded. Like someone had turned the volume knob on the world down to 0 and then invited every ghost in Mahoning County to move in and whisper at full blast. Mom kept the restored toys locked in the hall closet for 3 whole years. She said they made her skin crawl. I understood. Every time I walked past that closet door I could hear the tiny click-click-click of plastic G.I. Joe boots marching across the shelf inside, even though the door was shut and the key was on Mom's dresser. Some nights the marching would stop right when my hand touched the knob, like whoever was in there was waiting for me to open it and play. I never did. Mom took Dad's life insurance money and turned our dining room into a beauty salon. Ruth's Cuts and Curls opened in the spring of 1968 with a pink and teal sign and a jar of hard candy by the register. Ladies from the neighborhood came to get their hair teased sky high and to ask, in voices sweet as saccharin, any word on poor Ray? Mom would smile the tight smile she'd perfected and say, "The Lord called him home," which was technically true if the Lord wore a red ribbon and had pigtails. Business boomed. The house smelled like Aqua Net and permanent wave solution instead of coal smoke and old Granddad, and for a little while it almost felt safe. Almost. Because the little girl never left. She just got bolder. In 1969 I turned 12 and started noticing her in reflections. Not in mirrors, those still only showed the tiny handprints, but in anything shiny, the chrome toasters, the curved side of the aluminum percolator, the black mirror of the television screen when it was turned off. A flash of a pale face, dark curls, eyes too big for her head, always smiling like she knew the punchline to a joke I hadn't heard yet. The first time it happened I dropped a whole gallon of milk on the linoleum. Mom came running, saw the white lake spreading across the floor, and asked what was wrong. I pointed at the toaster. Nothing there but my own scared face. She kissed my forehead and told me grief does strange things to a growing boy. I didn't tell her the girl in the toaster had waved at me. By 1971 I was 14, shooting up like a weed, voice cracking, sneaking cigarettes behind the garage with my buddy Ricky from down the block. Ricky was the only person I ever told about the dollhouse, the fire, the mine, all of it. He believed me because Ricky's own dad had vanished in the same mine back in '58 and the family still got Christmas cards every year with no return address, just a single piece of coal inside. We made a pact. The summer we turned 16 we'd ride our bikes out to the Jean Marie mine and see for ourselves what was down there pulling fathers in like a riptide. We never got the chance. The night before Halloween 1971, Devil's Night, the older kids called it, Mom locked up the salon early because a nor'easter was blowing in off Lake Erie. She sent me to the attic to fetch the box of Christmas decorations she kept forgetting to bring down. I hadn't been up there since the night Dad tried to burn the dollhouse 5 years earlier. The stairs groaned under my weight now. The air smelled like wet newspapers and something sweet rotten, like apples left too long in the barrel. Moonlight came through the little octagon window in a silver blade, cutting straight across the floorboards to where the dollhouse sat. It wasn't charred anymore. Someone had rebuilt it. Every shingle, every window pane, every microscopic hinge gleamed like it had just come off a 1940s assembly line. The wallpaper was fresh, tiny roses blooming red as arterial blood. The furniture was all there, polished walnut and velvet cushions. And the lights worked. They glowed soft and warm, the color of candlelight seen through a child's eyelashes. I stood frozen on the top step, heart jackhammering so loud I was sure whatever lived inside could hear it. Then the front door of the dollhouse swung open by itself. A little girl stepped out onto the porch. She was maybe 6, barefoot in a faded green party dress with a Peter Pan collar. Dark curls framed a face so pale it looked blue in the moonlight. In her arms she carried the melted G.I. Joe from Christmas 1965, its face still twisted mid-scream, but now it was dressed in a tiny millworker's outfit, complete with a miniature lunch pail. She looked right at me, raised one hand, and beckoned with a single finger the way Grandma used to when she wanted me to come for cookies. I ran. Took the stairs 3 at a time, slammed the attic door, and shoved Mom's heavy cedar hope chest in front of it. Mom found me curled on the hallway floor hyperventilating. She thought I'd seen a rat. I let her believe it. 3 days later, on November 2nd, the phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Mom answered in the kitchen. I heard her say, "Yes, this is Ruth Callahan," and then nothing for a long time. When she hung up she came to my room and sat on the edge of my bed and told me Grandma Ruth had passed in her sleep at the nursing home in Cleveland. Peaceful, they said. Found with a smile on her face and a red ribbon tied in a perfect bow around her neck. The ribbon had a lump of coal knotted into it. The nurses thought it was some old family tradition. We drove to Cleveland for the funeral. I hadn't seen Grandma in 4 years, not since she went into the home after her stroke. She looked tiny in the casket, hands folded like she was praying, but her mouth was curved in a secret little grin. The funeral director handed Mom a sealed envelope with my name on it in Grandma's spidery handwriting. Inside was the silver key and a single sheet of paper that read, "Tommy. She's not angry anymore. She just wants her brother to come home for Christmas. Close the door when you leave, darling. Love forever. Grandma Ruth." I threw up in the funeral home bathroom until there was nothing left but bile and terror. We brought Grandma's body back to Youngstown to bury her next to Grandpa in Calvary Cemetery. After the graveside service Mom told me to wait in the car while she thanked the priest. I watched them talking under the yew tree, breath fogging in the cold, and that's when I saw her, the little girl standing at the edge of the cemetery, barefoot in the dead grass, holding the melted G.I. Joe by one arm. She raised her free hand and pointed straight at me. Then she turned and the toy dissolved into coal dust that the wind carried away like black snow. That night I did the only thing I could think of. I went home, dragged the hope chest away from the attic door, and climbed the stairs with a hammer and a box of 10-penny nails. The dollhouse sat exactly where I'd left it, front door still open and welcome. Every light was on. I could see tiny shadows moving behind the curtains, 2 of them now, one small, one grown. I didn't look too close. I raised the hammer and brought it down as hard as I could. The roof caved. I smashed again and again, splintering walnut, crushing velvet, shattering the glowing windows into 1,000 lit fireflies. When there was nothing left but kindling and wire, I swept it all into a metal trash can, doused it with the rest of Dad's kerosene, and struck a match. The flames were beautiful. They were blue at the base and gold at the tips, and for a second I thought I heard singing, children singing Silent Night in rounds. Then the can exploded. Not from heat, from something inside pushing out. A wave of coal dust blasted into my face, into my mouth, my eyes, my lungs. I fell backward choking. When I could see again, the fire was out. The trash can was cold. And in the ashes sat the dollhouse, perfect again, not a scratch on it, every light still burning soft and warm. That was the night I started planning my escape. I graduated high school in June 1973, enlisted in the Army the next day, and never spent another night under that roof. Mom sold the house to a young couple from Pittsburgh the following spring. They lasted 11 months. Then the wife miscarried on Christmas morning and they moved back east, swearing the baby's room upstairs was always freezing cold no matter how high they turned the heat. After that the house sat empty for years, windows boarded, for sale sign fading in the yard. Kids said if you walked past at midnight on Christmas Eve you could see tiny lights glowing behind the plywood, like a family having dinner inside a house no bigger than a bread box. I ended up stationed in Germany, then Fort Benning, then Vietnam. I didn't come home for 8 years. When I finally did, in December 1981, it was only because Mom's liver had finally given up from all the nerve medicine she'd been swallowing since Dad disappeared. She died 2 days before Christmas. I buried her next to Grandma and Grandpa, the last Callahan and Calvary. Afterward I stood in the empty beauty salon that still smelled faintly of perm solution and made a decision. I was going to end it. Not me. The house. I waited until Christmas Eve. Drove out to the old neighborhood with a 5-gallon can of gasoline in the trunk and a Zippo in my pocket. The moon was full, the snow deep and clean. The old place looked smaller than I remembered, sagging and tired, but the attic window glowed faintly like someone had left a nightlight on for a child who was afraid of the dark. I kicked in the back door, the same one Grandma had marched through in 1965, and the smell hit me, lavender, coal dust, and something coppery sweet. Every footstep I took left a bloody print. Not mine. The blood was already on the floor, fresh and wet, leading up the stairs in tiny barefoot prints and one set of men's work boots. I followed them because I was done running. At the top of the attic stairs the dollhouse waited, bigger now, almost waist-high, front door open, lights blazing. The little girl sat on the porch swing, kicking her legs. Dad sat beside her in a tiny porch chair that shouldn't have held his weight, still wearing his mill coveralls from 1966, face untouched by 20 years underground. They were eating Christmas cookies off a plate that said Ruth's Cuts and Curls, Grand Opening 1968. Dad looked up when he saw me. His eyes were the same washed-out blue I remembered, but the guilt in them had turned to something peaceful. He smiled, the first real smile I'd ever seen on his face, and said, "Hey, Tommy. Took you long enough. She's been waiting." The little girl, her name was Eileen, I knew that now without being told, hopped off the swing and ran to me. She took my hand. Her fingers were freezing. She led me up 3 little stairs that hadn't been there a second ago and through the front door into a living room that smelled exactly like Grandma's kitchen Christmas pudding. Mom was there too, younger, beautiful, stirring something on a stove the size of a shoebox. Grandma Ruth sat in a rocking chair knitting a red ribbon into a noose, humming to our Allura Lural. Eileen tugged me toward the staircase inside the house. "Come see your room," she said. "We saved it just the way you left it." I looked back once. Dad raised a tiny cup of eggnog and toast. Merry Christmas, son. No more coal. I followed her up the stairs. And I never came down. If you're watching this on Christmas Eve, look out your window. If you see a house on your street with every light on, warm and golden, and a little girl waving from the attic, don't wave back. Close the curtains. Lock the doors. And whatever you do, don't check your stocking in the morning. Because some families never stop delivering second chances. And some families never let you leave. They found my car on Christmas morning 1981, engine cold, driver door hanging open, 5-gallon gas can still in the trunk unopened. Footprints led from the driver's side through the snow to the back porch of the old house, one set of combat boots, size 10, same as mine, then nothing. No prints coming back out. The police report called it probable suicide by smoke inhalation even though there was no fire, no smoke, no body. They searched the place top to bottom, ripped up floorboards, knocked holes in plaster, even brought dogs. All they found was the dollhouse sitting in the middle of the attic exactly where it always sat, lights on, front door open like it was expecting company. One rookie cop picked it up to bag it as evidence and dropped it screaming. Said it burned his hands ice cold. The skin on his palms blistered anyway. They left the dollhouse where it was. Nobody ever bought the house again. It still stands there on Elm Street, windows dark except for every December 24th when the attic glows soft gold until dawn. But I didn't die. Not the way they think. When Eileen took my hand and pulled me up those tiny stairs inside the dollhouse, everything changed size in a heartbeat. 1 second I was 30 years old, 6'1", 200 pounds of war and whiskey and nightmares. The next I was 8 again, barefoot in footy pajamas, standing in a hallway that smelled like pine needles and cinnamon. The wallpaper had little rocking horses on it. A grandfather clock the size of a man ticked loud and slow. Eileen skipped ahead of me in her green party dress, pigtails bouncing, singing "I Saw Tommy Kissing Santa Claus" in a voice that made the bulbs on the little tree twinkle brighter. She pushed open a door with a crayon sign that read Tommy in uneven letters, and there it was. My room. My real room. The one Dad burned in 1965. Red Schwinn leaning against the wall, G.I. Joes lined up on the shelf like soldiers waiting for inspection, teddy bear propped on the pillow with one button eye loose just the way I remembered. Even the band-aids on my knees from falling off the bike last summer were back, crisp and white. I started crying and couldn't stop. Eileen climbed up on the bed beside me and patted my back the way Grandma used to. "It's okay," she whispered. "Nobody gets coal here." Daddy promised. Downstairs I could hear Mom laughing at something Grandma said, the clink of glasses, Perry Como on the radio singing about chestnuts roasting. I wanted to run down there and hug them until my arms broke, but my feet wouldn't move. Eileen took my face in her tiny freezing hands and looked straight into my eyes. "You can stay forever if you want. But first you have to give something back." I asked what. She smiled the way kids do when they know the rules to a game you've never played. "The morning you stole." She led me to the attic of the dollhouse, only now the attic was huge, rafters stretching up into black forever, lit by a single red bulb swinging on a wire. In the middle of the floor sat every lump of coal that had ever appeared in our family. Hundreds of them. Some shiny and new, some crumbling to dust, all wrapped in faded red ribbon. Dad knelt in front of the pile sorting them like he was counting money. He looked up when we came in, face streaked with coal dust and tears. "Hey soldier," he said, voice rough but gentle. "Took a wrong turn at 1965, didn't you?" I couldn't speak. He stood up slow, joints popping like he'd been kneeling there 20 years, and hugged me so hard I felt ribs creak. He smelled exactly like the mill, sweat and steel and coal oil. "I tried to burn it all away," he whispered into my hair. "Thought if nothing was left there'd be no pain left. Turns out pain's the only thing fire can't eat." Eileen picked up the newest lump, the one that had been around my neck in the cemetery, the one Grandma wore when she died, and held it out to me. "This one's yours now, Tommy. You have to carry it until somebody else needs a mourning back." I asked how long. Dad answered before she could. "Until you're ready to forgive me." I looked at him, really looked. The man who torched my childhood, who walked into a mine and never walked out, who sat smiling in a dollhouse attic waiting for his son to come hate him forever. And I felt something shift inside my chest like ice breaking on the river in spring. I took the coal. It was warm, pulsing like a heartbeat. I said the words I never thought I'd say. "I forgave you a long time ago, Dad. I was just too scared to come home." The red bulb flared white. The coals on the floor turned to ash and blew away like black snow. Dad aged backward in front of me, beard vanishing, shoulders filling out, eyes clearing until he was the father from before the mill hardened him, the one who used to push me on the swing until the chain squeaked. He smiled the smile from old photographs and took my hand. Eileen took the other. Together we walked down the attic stairs that weren't tiny anymore. They were the stairs I remembered from Grandma's house in Cleveland, the ones that creaked on the 7th step. At the bottom was the living room on Christmas morning 1965, only the tree was still standing, ornaments whole, angel perfect on top. Mom and Grandma turned from the kitchen doorway holding plates of pancakes shaped like reindeer. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Grandma just nodded like she'd been expecting us. We ate breakfast. We opened presents that were never burned. I got the erector set Ferris wheel I'd begged for, Dad got a new fishing rod, Mom got the pearl earrings she always wanted. Eileen got a china doll with real tea inside. Nobody mentioned coal. Nobody mentioned fires or ribbons or mines. After breakfast Dad and I went out back and built a snow fort big enough for the whole block. The snow was perfect packing snow, the kind that doesn't happen by accident. When we came in stomping boots, Grandma had cocoa waiting and marshmallows shaped like tiny stockings. That night I fell asleep in my own bed with the rocket ship sheets listening to Dad read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" in the living room, voice cracking on the good parts the way it always did. I've been here ever since. Time works different inside the dollhouse. Sometimes a day lasts a year out there. Sometimes a year passes in a night. I've watched the world outside the windows change, cars get rounder then boxier then round again, music go from Beatles to disco to hair metal to whatever kids listen to now. I've seen every Christmas morning our family should have had play out perfect and warm and safe. Mom never started drinking. Dad never worked himself to death. Grandma never had the stroke. Eileen grew up, sort of, stays about 10 now, old enough to beat me at Monopoly but young enough to still want bedtime stories. We celebrate every holiday twice, once on the day it happens outside, once on the day it was supposed to be good. But there's a price. Every Christmas Eve I have to leave. The front door opens on its own at midnight and I step out into whichever year it is in the real world carrying the newest lump of coal wrapped in red ribbon. I find the house that needs it most, the one where a father is about to make the same mistake Dad did, the one where shame is sharper than love. I leave the coal on the porch or in a stocking or under a pillow. Sometimes the kid finds it and learns the lesson gentle. Sometimes the father finds it first and remembers his own childhood terror and chooses different. Sometimes nobody finds it until it's too late and I have to wait another year. Last year, 2024 outside, I delivered to a split level in Oregon. The dad had already piled the toys in the backyard and was reaching for the gas can when he saw the ribbon coal on the welcome mat. He stood there a long time in the porch light. Then he carried every single toy back inside, woke his daughter, and helped her rebuild the Lego castle she'd worked on all month. I watched from the shadows until the house lights went out. When I got home, Dad was waiting on the dollhouse porch with Coco. "Good job, soldier," he said. I asked how he knew. He tapped the side of his nose the way Santa does. Takes one to know one. This year it's different. This year the coal is heavier. It's warm all the time now, pulsing faster. Eileen says that means it's almost done. Dad won't look at me when I ask what happens then. Grandma just keeps knitting red ribbons into longer and longer chains. Mom hums Christmas carols in the kitchen and pretends she can't hear my questions. I think when the last morning I stole is finally paid back completely, the dollhouse will let us go. Or it will close the door forever. I don't know which scares me more. But tonight is Christmas Eve 2025 outside. The door will open in a few hours. I'm writing this on the little desk in my room while the house sleeps because someone has to warn you. If you wake up tomorrow and find a lump of coal wrapped in red ribbon, don't throw it away. Don't burn it. Don't ignore it. Put it in your pocket. Carry it until you find the person who needs their morning back. Because some fires never go out if you just give them something warmer to burn. And some families are still trying to come home for Christmas. Even if home is only 3 stories tall and fits inside your nightmares. The coal in my pocket tonight is different. It's no longer cold or warm, it's hot, too hot, like it's been sitting in the heart of a forge. Every heartbeat it pulses against my ribs, once, twice, like it's counting down to something I'm not ready for. I've carried hundreds of these lumps across 50 years of Christmas Eves, but this one is the last. I can feel it the way you feel a storm coming in your teeth. This is the original piece. The one that started everything. The first lump Dad placed in my stocking in 1965. The one Grandma chipped from the Jean Marie vein with her own hands. The one Eileen wore around her neck when she stepped off the chair in 1943. It's come full circle, and tonight it wants to go home. Downstairs the house is quiet in the way only dollhouses get quiet right before everything changes. No clatter of Mom setting out cookies. No low rumble of Dad turning the pages of the Sears catalog pretending he isn't crying over toys he'll never buy again. No creak of Grandma's rocking chair. Even the grandfather clock has stopped ticking. The only sound is the coal in my pocket, thump thump, thump thump, matching the blood in my ears. I creep to the attic. The stairs don't creak tonight, they wait. The red bulb is gone. In its place hangs a single Christmas bulb, clear glass, glowing white hot. Beneath it the pile of returned coals is almost gone. Only 3 remain. 1 for Eileen. 1 for Dad. 1 for me. They sit on a little velvet pillow Grandma sewed the year Eisenhower died, the fabric worn soft as a confession. Eileen is already there, sitting cross-legged in her green dress, knees dirty like she's been playing outside all day even though there is no outside here. She's braiding the last red ribbon into a circle big enough to fit around an adult neck. Dad stands behind her, hands on her shoulders, staring at the coals like they're old war buddies he never wanted to see again. Grandma sits in the rocker that wasn't there yesterday, needles clicking slow and steady, knitting smoke into shape. I pull the burning coal from my pocket. It doesn't scorch the fabric. It doesn't burn my skin. It just sits there glowing, waiting. Dad speaks first, voice raw like he's been screaming for decades and only just stopped. It's time, Tommy. I ask what happens when I put it back. Grandma answers without looking up. The morning comes back to the world. And we go with it. Eileen finishes the ribbon circle and holds it up. It looks exactly like the one the cops found around Dad's neck in the mine. Exactly like the one around Grandma's in the nursing home. Exactly like the one I'll be wearing soon if I don't do this right. I kneel and place the final coal on the pillow. The 4 pieces touch. The attic explodes with light, not red, not white, but the color of sunrise on fresh snow the moment before the world wakes up. I see every Christmas we never got to have all at once, Dad teaching me to drive in the Kmart parking lot, Mom dancing with Grandma to Elvis on the kitchen radio, Eileen opening a bicycle with a big red bow, me coming home from basic training in dress blues, all of us alive and laughing and whole. The images burn themselves into my eyes until I can't tell if I'm crying or if the light is crying through me. When the light fades, we're standing in the backyard of the house on Elm Street, December 25, 1965, 6:03 a.m., the exact minute Dad struck the match the first time. The pile of toys is there, waiting. Dad is there too, younger, harder, eyes wild with the righteousness and terror. He's holding the box of matches, hand shaking. I'm 8 years old again, standing in the kitchen window in my pajamas, watching. Only this time I'm 38 and 60 and 8 all at once, a ghost made of every year I carried the coal. I step between Dad and the toys. He can't see me yet. I place the hot coal in his bare hand. He gasps, drops the matches. The coal doesn't burn him either. It just sits there glowing, showing him everything I just saw, every Christmas we lost, every morning he stole from all of us. His knees buckle. He falls into the snow and sobs the way he did the day Grandma arrived, only this time there's no anger left, just a hollow man shaped like my father. I kneel beside him. I'm 8 and I'm old and I'm every age in between. I put my arms around him the way I never got to when I was small because I was too scared and he was too proud. I whisper the only thing that matters. It's okay, Daddy. We can put them back. He looks up. For the first time he sees me, really sees me, all the versions of his son standing in the snow like time folded in on itself. He drops the coal into the snow where it hisses and turns to steam that smells like pine and cinnamon and forgiveness. Together we carry every toy back inside. The G.I. Joes, the erector set, the Schwinn, the teddy bear with the loose eye. We set them under the tree that isn't broken. Mom comes downstairs in her robe, confused but smiling like she can feel the morning fixing itself around her. Grandma's taxi pulls up right on time, only this time she steps out carrying a box of fresh-baked colicky and a smile instead of vengeance. We eat pancakes shaped like reindeer. We open presents. Dad helps me put together the Ferris wheel and doesn't yell when I strip one of the tiny screws. Eileen sits on his lap the whole time, invisible to everyone but us, kicking her feet and stealing marshmallows from his cocoa. At noon we go outside and build a snow fort big enough for the whole block. At dusk Grandma tucks me in and sings Tuoraluralurau until I fall asleep without fear for the first time in 60 years. When I wake up it's Christmas morning 2025 in the real world. I'm 70 years old, lying in a hospital bed in Youngstown General, tubes in my arms, monitors beeping slow and steady. The nurse says I was found collapsed in the snow in front of the old house on Elm Street at 6:03 a.m., smiling, hands black with coal dust that refuses to wash off no matter how hard they scrub. They say I've been in a coma for exactly 1 year to the minute. They say it's a Christmas miracle I'm awake. There's a red ribbon tied around my wrist with a little silver key attached. On the bedside table sits a single lump of coal, cold now, ordinary, wrapped in the same ribbon. The nurse asks if I want her to throw it away. I tell her no. I tell her to give it to the children's ward. Tell them Santa brought second chances this year. Outside the window snow is falling soft and clean. Somewhere I can hear a little girl laughing and a father promising he'll never burn another morning as long as he lives. The coal on the table cracks neatly in half, revealing a perfect tiny red Schwinn bicycle inside, perfect, chrome shining. I close my eyes and smile. The morning is back where it belongs. And this time nobody is ever taking it away again. They released me from Youngstown General on New Year's Eve 2025 with a clean bill of health no doctor could explain and a plastic bag containing my clothes, my wallet, and the lump of coal that had split open like a geode to reveal the tiny red bicycle inside. The nurses kept calling me the Christmas miracle. I just smiled and asked for a cab to Elm Street. The house looked worse than I remembered. 40 years of abandonment had punched holes in the roof, smashed every window, let kudzu crawl in through the chimney like green fingers trying to choke the life out of it. But the front door stood open. Snow had drifted across the threshold in a perfect silence. My footprints from last Christmas were still there, preserved under a thin layer of ice, leading in but never coming out. I stepped inside. The air was warm. Impossible, but warm. Cinnamon, pine needles, and something metallic underneath, The same smell the house had the night I followed Eileen up the stairs and never came down. The floorboards didn't creak. They sighed, like they'd been holding their breath since 1965 and could finally exhale. Everything was huge again. Or I was small. I couldn't tell which. The hallway stretched taller than a cathedral. The grandfather clock stood where it always had, hands frozen at 6:03, but now the pendulum swung slow and steady, tick-tock, counting something that wasn't time anymore. I followed the sound of laughter up the stairs. The attic door was gone. In its place was a doorway made of red ribbon woven so tight it looked like velvet. I pushed through. The dollhouse wasn't a dollhouse anymore. It was the house. Full-sized, perfect, alive. Wallpaper with the little rocking horses, radiator clanking out heat, kitchen radio playing low, Perry Como promising a white Christmas that had finally come true. Mom stood at the stove flipping reindeer pancakes, hair in curlers, humming. Grandma sat at the table rolling out colicky dough, flour on her cheeks like war paint. Dad knelt by the tree tightening the last screw on the erector set Ferris wheel, tongue sticking out the side of his mouth in concentration the way it always did when he was fixing something important. And Eileen, 10 years old forever, ran to me barefoot across the hardwood and slammed into my legs so hard I almost fell. "You came back," she squealed. "We saved you a seat." They had. At the table, between Dad and Grandma, was an extra chair pulled up like they'd been eating with an empty place setting for 60 years waiting for me to fill it. A plate already held 3 pancakes, 2 strips of bacon arranged in a smile, and a mug of cocoa with exactly 7 miniature marshmallows, the magic number I always insisted on when I was 8. I sat. We ate. Nobody mentioned the missing years. Nobody mentioned the mine, the fire, the coma, the coal. We just talked about ordinary things, how the mill was hiring again, how Eileen made the honor roll, how Mom was thinking of painting the salon lavender instead of pink. Dad reached over and ruffled my hair the way he hadn't since I was small enough to sit on his shoulders. His hand was warm. Real. After breakfast we went outside. The backyard was exactly as it should have been in 1965, clothesline sagging under frozen sheets, Dad's old Ford in the driveway with the dent in the fender from when he taught Mom to drive, snow-deep and perfect for packing. We built the snow fort again. Only this time it was bigger, tall enough for all of us to stand inside, with windows and a tunnel and a flag made from one of Mom's old scarves. Eileen packed snowballs and stockpiled them like ammunition. Dad and I lay on our backs in the middle and watched clouds drift across a sky so blue it hurt to look at. I asked the question I'd been carrying since the hospital. "Is this forever now?" Dad didn't answer right away. He scooped a handful of snow, let it sift through his fingers. "Forever's a big word, soldier," he said finally. "But it's ours for as long as we keep the morning warm." Eileen popped in the snow like a distant gunshot. I looked toward the house. Every window glowed gold. But in the attic window, just for a second, I saw a shadow move, tall, thin, wearing a red ribbon like a noose, watching. Eileen saw it too. She squeezed my hand. "She's still mad," she whispered. "Not at us. At what we took from her." I asked who. Dad stood up, brushed snow off his coat. "The house," he said. "She's the house now. Always was. Every hurt board, every cold night, every father who ever thought shame was stronger than love, she drank it all. We fed her for 3 generations. Now she's full." Grandma's voice drifted from the back porch. "Time to come in, child. Cocoa's getting cold." We went inside. That night we decorated the tree again. Same ornaments, same tinsel, same angel with the slightly crooked halo. Dad lifted Eileen so she could put the star on top. I held the ladder. When the last light was strung we all stood back and looked. It was the most beautiful tree in the world. Then the lights flickered. Just once. Like a warning. Dad's face went pale. He looked at the clock. 11:58 p.m. Midnight's coming, he said. Eileen started crying, not loud, just quiet tears that froze on her cheeks before they could fall. Mom wrapped her arms around both of us. Grandma picked up the red ribbon she'd been knitting all month, now long enough to reach from the living room to the attic and back again. Dad took my hand. Listen close, Tommy. There's one last thing. He led us all upstairs. The attic was different now. No rafters, no red bulb, no pile of coals. Just a single door standing alone in the middle of the floor, wooden, painted the same green as Eileen's party dress, with a knob made from a lump of coal polished smooth. Behind it, something scratched. Slow. Deliberate. Like fingernails that had all the time in the world. Dad pressed the silver key into my hand. The one I'd worn in the hospital. The one that had opened every version of this house since 1965. She wants payment, he said. Not the mourning. She already has that. She wants the regret. All of it. Every tear we cried, every scream we swallowed, every Christmas we spent pretending we weren't broken. We can give it to her and stay here clean. Or we can walk out that door down there and take it with us into whatever comes next. I looked at my family. Mom, eyes bright with love and terror in equal measure. Grandma, calm as a frozen lake, ribbon coiled in her lap like a sleeping snake. Eileen, clutching the melted G.I. Joe that wasn't melted anymore. Dad, finally the man he should have been before the mill and the war and the depression taught him love looked like discipline. I thought about every year I carried the coal. Every porch I left it on. Every father who woke up Christmas morning and chose different because something ancient and furious gave him one more chance. I looked at the green door. The scratching stopped. Silence pressed against my eardrums like water. I walked to the door. Turned the coal knob. It opened onto darkness so complete it had weight. Inside waited every version of us that suffered. Little Eileen on the chair, ribbon around her neck, eyes bulging. Dad in the mine, curled around his shame, smiling as the cold took him. Grandma in the nursing home bed, stroking the ribbon like a pet. Mom at the kitchen table with her bottle of nerve medicine, whispering apologies to children who weren't there. Me at 38 and drunk on Christmas Eve 1981, carrying gasoline to burn a house that had already burned me. They all looked up when the door opened. I stepped inside. They rushed me, not angry, just hungry, mouths open in silent screams, hands reaching for the regret I carried like a second skeleton. I let them have it. Every ounce. It poured out of me in a black flood, thick as coal slurry, carrying every sleepless night, every nightmare, every time I woke up reaching for a father who wasn't there. They drank it down until there was nothing left but light. When it was over I was 8 years old again, clean, empty, new. The green door closed behind me with a soft click. I turned around. My family stood waiting on the other side, glowing, whole, smiling like people who'd finally laid their burdens down. Dad held out his hand. I took it. We walked downstairs together. The clock struck midnight. The house sighed one last time, content, full, asleep. And outside, for the first time in 60 years, snow began to fall upward. Soft. Quiet. Taking every shadow with it. The snow kept rising. At first it was only a few flakes lifting off the roof like white sparks from a dying fire, then whole sheets peeled away from the yard, spinning upward in slow motion, carrying the streetlights with them, carrying the moon, carrying every dark thing that had ever crouched on this block since the first furnace coughed black smoke over Youngstown, stood on the front porch watching it happen. Dad's arm around my shoulders. Mom's hand in mine, I lean on Grandma's hip, waving bye-bye to the night like it was an old friend moving away. The house began to shrink, not collapse, shrink, the way a photograph curls when you hold a match too close, edges browning, colors brightening one last time before they vanish. The porch boards folded gently under our feet, the Christmas tree in the living room folded into itself like a paper ornament, the grandfather clock folded its hands together and bowed. Everything we had ever loved about this place folded into a perfect three-story Victorian dollhouse, no bigger than a bread box, lights still glowing warm through the tiny windows, front door still open and welcome. Dad knelt and set it carefully on the snow that was no longer snow but pure light. He looked at me. Ready, soldier? I nodded. We all took one step forward. The dollhouse rose to meet us, and then we were inside again, only this time it wasn't small. It was everything. The walls stretched into forever. The ceiling became the sky we should have had every Christmas of our lives. The floor became the backyard, the street, the town, the world. Every place we had ever been hurt or healed or forgiven were the right size now, not too big, not too small, just right. Eileen ran ahead laughing, green dress bright as new leaves. And every step she took made flowers bloom in the snowlight. Mom and Dad followed hand in hand, young again, the way they looked in the photograph on the mantel before the mill and the war and the coal took pieces of them they never got back. Grandma stayed beside me. Ribbon finally gone from her fingers, hands open and empty and clean. She kissed my forehead the way she did the day she arrived with vengeance in 1965. Only now it was only love. Go on, Tommy, she said, morning's here. I looked back once. The dollhouse sat alone in the rising light, perfect, waiting. Understood then. It isn't a prison. It never was. The seed. Every time someone finds a lump of coal wrapped in red ribbon on their porch Christmas morning and chooses not to burn what they love, the seed cracks a little more. Every time a father puts down the match, a mother chooses the child over the bottle, a child forgives the hand that hurt them, the seed grows. One day it will be a tree big enough to hold every broken Christmas that ever was. And on that day the snow will fall upward everywhere, and every house that ever held regret will fold into light, and every family that ever lost its morning will step out into it whole. Until then the dollhouse waits, lights on, door open, stockings hung. Cookies on the table, cocoa still warm. If you wake up tomorrow and your porch is empty of coal, celebrate, you did it right. If you wake up tomorrow and there is a single lump wrapped in red ribbon, don't be afraid, open your door, carry it to the backyard. Set it in the snow, say the words out loud, I choose the morning. Then watch, the snow will rise, the house will shrink, and somewhere, in a town you've never heard of, a little boy or girl who was supposed to lose everything will open their eyes on Christmas morning and find their toys still there, their father crying happy tears, their mother laughing in the kitchen, their grandmother walking up the driveway with a box of colicky and mercy in her eyes. They won't know your name, they don't have to, the seed will remember, the light will remember, the morning will remember, and one day, when every last piece of coal has turned into a tiny red bicycle shining inside, the dollhouse will open its door one final time and let the last family step out into a world that finally learned how to keep Christmas without burning it down. Until then, keep your hearts warm, keep your matches in the drawer, keep the morning safe, because we're all still in there somewhere. Dad teaching me to ride without training wheels, Mom dancing in the kitchen, Grandma singing Tuara Luare. Lural, Eileen saving me the last marshmallow, all of us waiting for you to forgive whatever needs forgiving so we can come home for good. The snow is still falling upward. It always will be. Merry Christmas, family. The coal is gone, the fire is out. And the morning is finally, truly, forever ours. Go look out your window right now, see the snow going the wrong way, that's us. Wave, we can see you, and if your stocking is suddenly heavy with something that wasn't there when you went to bed, don't open it yet, wait until everyone is awake. Wait until the coffee is on and the tree lights are blinking and the person who hurt you most is standing in the doorway with fear in their eyes, then unwrap the ribbon together. Inside you'll find a tiny red Schwinn, or a G.I. Joe with both arms, or a teddy bear with both button eyes sewn back on. Hold it up, say thank you, say I'm sorry, say I love you, say the morning is ours again, then throw the coal, what's left of it, into the fireplace and watch it burn clean white, because the debt is paid, the circle is closed. And somewhere in Youngstown, Ohio, on Elm Street, a house that was never demolished is folding itself into light one last time. The attic window glows gold for exactly 7 seconds, then it's gone, only footprints remain in the snow, 5 sets. 2 big, 2 small, 1 medium, walking away from the empty lot toward a sunrise that finally belongs to everyone. Going home, all of us, every Christmas that was stolen, every father who learned too late. Every child who carried the coal so someone else wouldn't have to. We're going home, and we're bringing the morning with us.so if you feel a sudden warmth in your chest tonight, if the lights on your tree burn a little brighter, if you hear faint laughter through the walls that sounds like family you haven't met yet, don't be afraid, it's only us, passing through, leaving cookies on the table, hanging one last stocking with your name on it, whispering the only thing that ever mattered, you were never bad, you were never coal. You were always the morning, now open your eyes, it's Christmas, and keep it forever. The snow has stopped falling upward, it's falling right now, soft and clean, all over the world, look outside, we're already there, Merry Christmas, family, the fire is out, the door is open. And the morning, it's yours, keep it warm. Please subscribe.